am American and I've got some Scottish heritage, so I'd always wanted to explore the Highlands. So I spent some time making my way north from Edinburgh, staying in hostels and small B&Bs along the way. By the time I reached the Northern Highlands, I was feeling pretty confident in my hiking abilities. I'd done some challenging trails and even wild camped a few times, so when I heard about this remote trail that wasn't on most tourist maps, I thought, why not? It was supposed to lead to this hidden loch that was supposedly one of the most beautiful spots in all of Scotland. The trailhead was near this tiny village. Honestly, it was more like a handful of houses clustered around a pub. I stopped in for a meal before heading out, figuring I'd stock up on some energy for the hike. The pub was one of those old cozy places, with a low ceiling and a fire crackling in the corner. It was pretty empty when I went in, just a couple of old-timers nursing pints at the bar. I ordered some food and got to chatting with the bartender, telling him about my plans to hike out to the loch. The change in atmosphere was noticeable. The bartender got this weird look on his face. He tried to play it off, said something about the weather being unpredictable this time of year, but I could tell there was more to it. I pressed a bit, asking if there was something I should know about the trail. That's when one of the old-timers spoke up, apparently overhearing my conversation so far.
"You don't want to be going out there, lad,"
he said.
"That place is not right."
I laughed at first, thinking they were just trying to scare the tourist. But that old man was dead serious. He told me that people had gone missing on that trail over the years. Not many, and not often, but enough to make the locals wary.
"There's something out there,"
he said, his voice low.
"Something old, something that doesn't like visitors."
Now, I'm not usually one for superstition, but the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. Still, I figured they were just being overprotective. I thanked them for the warning, but said I was still planning to go. The bartender sighed and said,
"If you must go, at least take this."
He handed me a small, smooth stone with some kind of symbol carved onto it.
"Old protection,"
he said. "Contort." I pocketed the stone, more to be polite than anything else, finished my meal, and headed out. The trail started off easy enough, winding through some beautiful pine forests. But as I got further in, things started to change. The trees got older, for instance, all thick and overgrown. The undergrowth thickened too, making the trail harder to follow and go through. And before long, there was the smell, kind of a musty and sweet smell at the same time, like rotting flowers. It wasn't strong, but it was persistent. I had been hiking for about 3 hours when I realized I should have reached the loch by now. I checked my map, but I definitely made a wrong turn somewhere. I wasn't seeing any of the landmarks I was supposed to be seeing. I tried to backtrack, but didn't locate anything familiar. Now, get this. As I was walking, the forest was filled with the sounds of nature, and literally, the next single step I took, the moment my foot hit the ground, everything fell silent. That was extremely disturbing. Not too long after, that smell got stronger. I was kind of freaked out. I decided to set up camp for the night right there, and I would get my bearings in the morning. I found a nice open space and got my tent set up just as it was getting dark. That night, I still have nightmares about it. I woke up because I was hearing a whispering sound. At first, I thought it was wind through the trees, but it kept getting clearer until I could hear words that I couldn't clearly make out yet. But it was very obviously multiple voices talking over each other, and they seemed to be getting closer. I double-checked my tent, making sure the zipper was all the way up. I told myself to calm down, that it's nothing out of the ordinary. I then saw shadows on the tent wall, thanks to it being a clear night with a bright moon. Something was moving around out there, and the shapes they cast were wrong. Very tall, very thin, moving in ways that nothing should. I was paralyzed then, just frozen there left to watch. The whispers grew louder, and I could smell that sickly sweet odor right outside the tent. Then something brushed up against the side. I had to bite my lip to keep me from screaming. This went on for a few hours. Sometimes the shadows would retreat, and I would think it was over, but then they'd come back even closer than before. By the time dawn finally came, I was a wreck. As soon as there was enough light out, I packed up my things and started hiking again. This time, I didn't care which direction. I just wanted out. But no matter how far I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Around late afternoon, I could hear running water. I pushed through some bushes and found myself on the shore of a loch. But this wasn't the beautiful, peaceful place I'd been told about. The water here was dark, almost black, and there was a very thick mist hanging over it. The trees around the shore were twisted and wrong, their branches reaching out over the water like grasping fingers. And there were stones, standing stones forming a rough circle near the water's edge. They were covered in markings, similar to the one on the stone the bartender had given me. As I looked at them, I felt a pressure building in my head, like right before a migraine. I suddenly saw ripples forming on the water's surface. Something was moving around out there. Something big, something coming my way. Before I saw it emerged, I noped out of there. I don't remember much of what happened next, just crashing through the underbrush, branches whipping my face, that sickly sweet smell all around me. I could hear something moving through the woods behind me too, I swear, but I didn't dare look back. Thank heavens I found my way out somehow. Everything was really just a blur. By the time I came out, I was scratched up and babbling about monsters in the loch. The locals didn't seem surprised. I went back to my hostel, got cleaned up, drank some strong tea. When I finally settled myself down, I went back to that pub to return the stone. When I tried to give it to the old man, he shook his head.
Keep it,
He said.
You might need it again someday.
I left the Highlands the next day, taking some new lifelong memories and scars with me. My name is Magnus, and I'm from Iceland. I saw the Grim Reaper. In the year 2014, I was 13 years old. My family got a puppy because we thought our old dog was going to pass soon. She was getting weak. She didn't do much anymore, until we got the puppy, who we named Lori. Our older dog, Rose, got better and happier after Lori came to us. It was like Rose thought of Lori as her own pup. After around 6 months, Lori began having problems. She always had to go to the bathroom to either pee or poo, and I'm talking more than 20 times a day. Her stomach became bloated. We took her to the vet and she gave us some pills, but she didn't get any better after a month or two. We found out that her liver didn't grow. It was apparently infected and was not doing its job properly. We had to take her to a better vet or animal hospital since we lived in a small town. There was just so much a small town vet can do here. Once there, we were told she would have to stay the night. I believed we would take her home the next day or the day after. However, the last night we stayed there, she was put down, since the vet could not do anything for her. We discovered the problem with her liver a little too late. Now, the very same night she passed, I had a very strange slumber. It didn't feel like sleep. It didn't feel like a dream, but I knew I'd fallen asleep at some point. Some believe it to be astral projection. Maybe that's what it was. I was in my kitchen all of a sudden. I went to look through the window and I saw Lori running up towards the house, but she wasn't on the ground. She seemed to be floating. She was also transparent. I could see through her. But what I saw coming after her I did not expect. Keep in mind, I had no idea the dog had passed that night. The figure I saw I knew instantly was Death, the Grim Reaper. But it wasn't your typical look for the Grim Reaper. It was shorter, like a child in height. It had a white hood and cloak. I could not see any legs either. It still had some flesh on its face and hands, but most of it had rotted away. Lori tried to hide behind me. It didn't seem to notice me. It just went after her. This made me very angry, so I lashed out at the Grim Reaper, trying to punch it. But I was pushed back as Lori ran away. That's when I woke up. I had a weird pain in my back as if I'd just fallen on it. I told my mom about this a year later. She's a little superstitious, and I didn't want to worry her at the time. She thinks it appeared white and youthful because Lori was young and had a pure soul. The dream and the picture of that Grim Reaper is always in the back of my mind. No dream has ever been as vivid and clear as that. You know, I never really thought I'd be sitting down writing an experience like this that involved me. But after a while had passed since this incident, I figured now I can tell this story. Now I should explain that I'm adopted. My parents were both unfit to be, well, parents, and so my aunt and her wife both adopted me and took me in as their own when I was about 12. Being adopted, I gained a brother and 2 sisters. My brother Roger was a Marine and was constantly away. My sister Felicia lived about 6 hours away from us. My sister Crystal was the only one of my aunt's wife's kids to live nearby. Anyway, at the time of this story, I was a senior in high school. It was winter break and I couldn't wait to relax for 2 whole weeks. Being the loner I was, I decided to stay home all break. My days mainly consisted of binge-watching Netflix and playing a crap ton of video games. That's just how I liked it, staying up until 5 a.m., then sleeping until 2 in the afternoon. One afternoon, I woke up to loud knocking at my door and the calling of my name. I reply with a groggy,
Yeah. Crystal's gonna be staying the night with her kids, while me and Sherry hang with an old friend tonight.
my aunt explained and walked away. Great, I thought. Me and Crystal didn't hate each other, we just didn't have a single thing in common, so we didn't have much of a relationship. She was really into witchcraft and voodoo stuff. Stuff I thought was just junk she wouldn't let go of from her goth days in high school. She always seemed so normal during the day, but at night she'd get really weird and start blabbering on about summoning things. I never gave it too much thought, other than she's probably crazy. 6 p.m. comes around, and I hear my sister Crystal and her kids swing by. I happened to be eating cereal on the couch when they came in, so I greeted them right away.
Hey guys.
I say as pleasantly as I can. The kids respond with their cheerful noises and 1,000,000 hellos, but my sister didn't seem to notice. She didn't so much as look at me as she walked in and dropped off her kids' stuff on the couch next to me. Now, like I said, we weren't close at all, but we weren't on any bad terms. I expected her to at least smile and nod like she normally would. But no, nothing. Somewhat annoyed, I directed all my attention at the kids, listening to the tales of the museum they went to the other day. After some time, I felt as if I got my fill of social activity for the day and went downstairs to the basement, where my room was. It was around 7 p.m. or so now, so I knew the kids would be getting ready for bed soon. I decided I'd keep it quiet down here, as their room was directly above mine. I put on some Arrow and began my night of Netflix. About 5 or so episodes later, I hear a noise coming from upstairs, sort of like someone moving furniture or something like that. It wasn't like a table or anything, though. To me, it sounded like a rug being pulled around.
Whatever. Guess she's doing some moving around up there,
I think to myself. But then it kept going. It sounded like she moved it all around the darned house. Annoyed, I walked up the basement stairs and opened the door which led to the kitchen, closing it behind me as I walked in. I walk into pure darkness, except for the lighting of 3 candles all grouped together on the kitchen counter. Save for the small area by where the candles were, I could not see a thing. I turned to my right and began shuffling my hand on the wall, looking for the light switch. Not having much of a sense of where in the kitchen I was, it took a moment. I want to say a solid 5 seconds after searching for the darned light switch, I heard a whisper coming from the darkness. It was subtle, and obviously directed towards me.
"What are you doing?"
I heard it say.
"Looking for the light switch because you only got candles lighting things up in here."
I replied, obviously annoyed. Before I could even finish my sentence, however, she cut me off as the last word left my mouth. In what I could describe best as a whisper shout, she replied with,
"He doesn't like that. You'll scare him off."
I ignored her nonsense and eventually found the light switch. Flicking it on revealed the rest of the kitchen, but boy did I wish I left the dang thing off. Felt as if my heart stopped. My eyes widened in pure disbelief as what looked like the body of a dead dog lay on the floor in the middle of the kitchen, sitting in a pool of blood.
"What the heck?"
I exclaimed, unable to muster anything else. I backed all the way up against the wall, my back hitting the door as I did. It was the most horrific thing I'd seen in my entire life, until I took my eyes off the body. Turning to look for my sister, I saw her in the doorway that connected the living room and the kitchen. But she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was a man with a hood over his head. Thanks to the light now illuminating the room, I saw his face. He was a pale man, no older than 30, and his mouth was covered in blood. But that wasn't the first thing I noticed. What I first noticed was the way his face was formed. It was weird and unnatural, his forehead huge, his eyes just slits that didn't seem natural at all. He didn't look human. Feeling like I was going to lose my mind, I turned and opened the door behind me and began running down the stairs, fear taking over my body. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life. Halfway down, I heard the chilling and adrenaline-inducing sound of loud footsteps following me down the stairs. I didn't close the door behind me when I left, so it would be easy for whoever was behind me to begin chasing me. This only made me speed up and sprint the rest of the way down, running as fast as I possibly could. At the bottom of the stairs, I didn't even think about turning around to see if I was still being chased, as I could still hear those footsteps following me. I ran down into the basement and quickly into my room, slamming the door behind me and locking the door as I did. Not even 2 seconds after I locked the door, a loud bang came from it, as if someone had run directly into it full force. The flimsy door instantly showed signs of giving in with the assault. I screamed at the top of my lungs, not sure what the heck I was supposed to do. Loud banging and knocking came from the door, and from the sound of it, it was 2 sets of hands knocking. Thinking on instinct alone, I grabbed my BB gun that sat in the corner of my room. Sure, it was a BB gun, and it wasn't even loaded, but it sure as heck looked like a real rifle. Anything to defend myself was good. I never considered calling the police as I entered self-defense mode, ready to bluff with this gun the moment that door came down, and it sure as heck seemed close. The banging and yelling increased as I heard my sister yelling things like, "Open this door," and "We just want to talk." But I didn't hear anything from the voice of the man she was with. He remained silent, banging on my door with my sister.
"I'm armed. Come in here and I'll blow your freaking head off,"
I replied. I didn't believe my own threat. It was just a half-cocked yelp in fear. No way someone would take it seriously. But oddly enough, it seemed to work. The banging stopped abruptly. The door, now cracked in the middle, seemed to hold to my surprise. Everything just stopped. Everything had been so heated and intense, then as soon as it began, it just stopped. There was what I thought to be silence for a long while. I then realized the kids had woke up and were now crying out loud. They could be heard clearly even down in the basement. Other than that, there was silence. Then there was a voice so cold, so chilling that thinking about it to this day strikes fear into my heart.
"Our blood is isn't the same, but you're still family. I wouldn't consume you, and neither would Thor."
I had no reply to my sister's words. The word consumed echoed in my ears, not leaving for the rest of the time we stood at opposite ends of the door. She attempted to sound pleasant, but it only came off as sinister. After a few long moments, I guess they realized I wasn't going to answer. I heard them leave, out of the basement and back up the stairs, the best sound I had ever heard in my life. I dropped the BB gun, and I sat on my bed, attempting to figure out what the heck just happened and if I'd been dreaming the whole time. Obviously, I hadn't been. I couldn't believe anything that just happened. I just couldn't. I didn't sleep for what seemed like hours before the sun came up. I waited for my aunt and her wife to return home and see the mess that was laid out in the kitchen. But to my dismay, that never happened. Instead, they came home to find nothing in the kitchen. It was cleaner than it was when they left. I couldn't believe my eyes. I frantically explained what happened, but without evidence left behind, they didn't believe my story. They assured me it was just a dream. I tried showing them the busted door, but they shrugged it off as the door being flimsy and old, just wear and tear they didn't notice from over the years. There was no way it was just wear and tear. It looked like what one could only explain as a door that almost got busted down on purpose. I saw my sister Crystal only a couple more times over the next year. Each encounter, she acted as though the events of that night didn't happen, and in fact, slowly seemed to try and make an effort to become closer to me. Something I was not down for. That fall, I applied and got accepted to a college about 2 hours away, which is where I live currently. I haven't heard from her since the day before I left for college, where she told me to stay safe because there are a lot of crazies out there. Yeah, trust me, I know. To this day, I wonder if it was all a dream, but thinking back to that busted up door, I know it was definitely not a dream. This past winter break, I decided on staying with a friend as I knew Crystal liked staying at home with my aunt during the holidays. But right around the corner, right now, is spring break, and I have no place to go but home. I'm hoping it was a one-time deal, and I'm praying not to see what I saw that night again, nor the man that she was with. I live in Australia, and my school was pretty big on doing campouts and such. They had taken us out to some camping grounds at the base of a mountain. When we arrived, there was no one else there. We set up our tents and found the toilet block up a driveway. That first night, something strange happened. I woke up seemingly for no reason. As I struggled to go back to sleep, I heard heavy breathing right outside our tent. It was right next to my head. I looked over to my best friend. She was also in the tent with me, but she was fast asleep with her mouth closed. The heavy breathing was not coming from her. Not to mention, I'd been awake for about 30 minutes before I heard that breathing. The tents made quite a bit of noise when they were unzipped, yet I'd heard no one else unzip their tent. Whatever was outside, they were not part of my class. I was paralyzed, lying there praying that it would leave. I was scared it would open the tent and take me and my best friend. But after what seemed like forever, it finally went away. I never heard it walk away. It simply faded away. The following morning, I told all my friends what happened, but they all said the breathing was probably my friend sleeping next to me. The following night, my friend needed to use the bathroom, but I didn't want to leave the tent. It was very early in the morning when she had to get up, but there was a bit of light out. I forced myself to get up to join her. As soon as we step outside the tent, we see this massive footprint, followed by a tiny one. They didn't appear to be from separate creatures, but one. Something with one large foot and one tiny one. They were the only footprints on the dewy grass. My friend tried to ignore the weirdness of the situation, claiming it was one of the guys playing a prank. I pointed out that there were no return footprints, so how did the guys get back to their tent? She ignored me and started walking up the dirt driveway. That's when we hear this ear-shattering shriek. We were both immediately on edge. We continued up the driveway, slowly, quietly. As we turned the corner, we saw what caused the shriek. There were 3 freshly killed possums in a line on the road. Blood seeped out of their necks. My best friend turned to me, asking if I think a dingo did that. I shook my head. There weren't dingoes around these parts. If there were, there would be a warning at the entrance of the campgrounds. My friend was now panicking.
Then what did that?
She asked. I don't know. I still don't know. We made it to the bathrooms, and as we began to walk back, we bumped into a woman. She appeared to be in her 30s. She smiled at us and walked into the bathroom. As we walked back, I realized I didn't know where she could have come from. The only people at the camping grounds were from our school. There were no other tents or caravans in the open space, and the grounds weren't that big. They were surrounded by mountains, creeks, and national parks. We would have seen her tent or caravan. But no, there was nothing no one knew there. To this day, I've never told anyone about the woman or the possums.